This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joie.
Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joie, and today is Monday, February 25th, 2019. We're at Mobile World Congress 2019, and my guest is Michael Josh of GadgetMatch.
Hey Miriam, it's really great to join you again. It's an exciting show this year.
I know, right?
I mean, every year we want to be excited. This year I feel like I kind of was.
Well, it's sunny for one,
Yes.
which is very
The weather
nice.
is great.
And not snowing,
Yes.
which is also great. I mean, it hasn't really snowed that often, but last year was nasty.
Yes. People might say, hey Miriam, it doesn't snow in Barcelona, but last year here in Barcelona, we were outdoors having a coffee, and it started snowing.
That's right.
And it was extremely cold and miserable
It was
because
terrible.
Barcelona isn't ready for snow.
It was gray, it was nasty, and this is so much better. So now that we've kind of preambled about how wonderful it is here, there are wonderful things happening here, and we've both been briefed. It's Monday, so it's day one of Mobile Congress. For us, it's really kind of day three because we had briefings on Saturdays, press conferences on Sundays, more this morning, etc. So I think we should go chronologically through what we've seen and kind of like comment on it.
Right.
I would say let's start with past Samsung, since I'd already covered that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe past Xiaomi too, because I did a pretty extensive Mi 9 roundup discussion with Andy Boxall last week.
Yeah.
So let's start with, did you go to Alcatel?
I did go to Alcatel.
So maybe that.
Sure, we can start there. So basically, it's this company, group of companies: Alcatel,
Yep.
TCL, BlackBerry. So they did show us a couple of things. The first, of course, the thing that caught our eye was the foldable, their version of a foldable phone. In fact, I just published a video right before this podcast. They are trying to find a way to create a foldable phone that more people can afford.
Yeah, it's interesting because they're already thinking like, okay, Gen 3, Gen 4 kind of thing.
Right.
When can we bring this to a sub $1,000 price point, maybe even a sub $500 price point?
Right.
So they had some kind of concepts there, which I thought were interesting. Particularly, I love the one that just looked like a normal phone when it was unfolded, like the same width and height.
And then it folded into
kind
a
of folded
clamshell?
into like a razor.
Yes,
almost,
exactly.
You know?
That's exactly
Yeah.
the thought that I had when I saw that phone. I was like, oh, wouldn't it be amazing? I know everybody's trying to create a foldable phone that transitions from phone to a more practical use of the technology to a tablet. But wouldn't it be amazing if they just gave us another Razr phone, a foldable display, right?
I know.
That's what I kind of geeked out about. And they have a little holster for it.
Yeah.
You can clip it on your belt.
So it was a lot of design exercise. You know, obviously these were mock-ups, but they looked feasible. And, we've seen we'll get to some of the stuff we've seen since then that really show that, we're way past what we saw last week with the Galaxy Fold already.
Right.
And it's incredible that the industry is moving so quickly. I really feel this is my theme for MWC this year. The industry is moving really quickly.
Right.
And also 5G. I mean, it's everywhere.
Right.
And we know that, and we've been bombarded and saturated with 5G propaganda almost, it feels like.
Yes.
But I want to say, I'm really happily surprised because the phones are here, they're real, they're launching soon, they don't look thick, they don't look bulky, they don't
no
look
longer
ugly.
just a promise anymore, just like the foldable phones, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we saw Samsung Yoam flexible displays at CES, 20, I don't even know, 7 years
They've been
ago?
working on this for 7 years, I think.
Yes, and I remember that, I can still vividly remember that video of that foldable display that rolls up into a lipstick, and that guy, stealing another person's date because he had that little foldable tablet. Now it's real, and 5G is real.
It's here.
Happening.
They have
It's here.
networks live. Orange has a live network here. I'm sure Voda too. Maybe Telefonica as well, Movistar, whatever they're called here. But I mean, look, the reality is, to me, what's really exciting is that TCL showed these concepts that were, you could see them coming to life in stores, available in 2021 or something, for $650 US.
And it's good that there
right?
are people thinking about the long term of this. We'll wait out because there is a lot of almost impractical kind of like just display of what we can do. Also, they will be available at really extremely high price points, but it's an exercise that needs to be done.
Exactly.
Right? Because if we don't, if they don't sell these prototype futuristic devices, we're never going to get to a point where the masses will have that,
Yeah.
that is just the way technology works. But it's nice that people are already thinking about what the next gen will be like.
Yeah, and that's what I loved about this little display. We couldn't touch them. We took photos of them. I'll put some on my Instagram.
We were not able to touch any foldable phone here at MWC so far.
Yet. And I think this gonna, if you're a journalist and you're listening to this and you're still at MWC, like in a couple of days.
It's still day one, so
maybe try to get your sights on that, and maybe like do a last minute. Oh, look, I managed to, corner some exec that was willing to let me touch something.
I was able to touch something
off
today,
the record, but I couldn't show a video. But yeah, that would be a good teaser.
Yeah.
So to me, the takeaway there was, it's again, it's real, it's coming. 5G is real, 5G is coming. Folding phones are real, they're coming, and also, form factors might really change because of this.
Right.
And that's kind of exciting to me because I'm kind of bored of the slab. I mean, you have an iPad Pro in front of you and it's a gorgeous piece of hardware. It's my favorite looking, not just tablet, but device. I really feel they kind of have this iPhone 4, iPhone 5 design that I love so much, the bronze design. But it's still ultimately just a slab of glass that is designed to put up front the app that you're using.
As human beings, our attention span for fun things, only has a certain shelf life.
Yeah.
And we're already at that point where we're bored. And I think as tech journalists, we're even more bored. And so I think you're right. 2019 is the tipping point year, right? Where we hit this corner on the road, this fork in the road, and we kind of like take a turn towards the future.
It's funny because I kept saying last year that, 2019, obviously 5G, but folding phones were just kind of like, whatever, late 19, 20, whatever. But in my mind was more like the full screen display, like is going to become a reality. Everybody's going to have it.
Yeah.
And we're seeing some of that, but it's gone beyond this now. We're kind of like, of course you do a full screen display. For example, the next kind of thing we saw, was Xiaomi yesterday morning at their press conference. The only, we talked about the Mi 9 last show, but they actually showed a Mi Mix 3 5G.
Yes.
And, there again is a full screen phone that has a bit of a mechanical slider for the front facing camera system.
Mm-hmm. I do like that phone,
and I think it's a beautiful phone. And, boom, it looks identical to the non-5G version, which really goes to show how 5G can be integrated in almost anything.
Right, and then Qualcomm today, it's so interesting because it's almost like people are going to say, why do we care? There's an announcement today about a chip that will appear, the 5G chip for next year's phones. But that's very important.
I know.
It's not something that, because we know that next year's phone will be smaller, will be able to have, form factors that there's no telling the difference.
So that's actually interesting you bring that up because there was a press conference today, Qualcomm. They kind of went over the whole thing. And usually, you go to these and it's like pie in the sky 5G scenarios. But now it's real because you can see phones here that are running on real networks. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, they're looking at industrial applications, IoT and car applications. And, these were always very pie in the sky. So was the phones. But now that the phones are real, it felt like to me, maybe this IoT stuff will become real.
And
maybe
steps are being taken toward.
The vehicle stuff will become real. I mean, I know technically it's possible, but, it has to be adopted.
Right.
So the news about Qualcomm that's really significant is that, 2 months ago, in December, at Qualcomm's conference in Hawaii, they announced the X50 LT 5G modem, and big deal, right? One chip, very integrated solution, power efficient, blah blah blah. Then you still needed a separate chip for LTE, so you could pair it with a Snapdragon 855 because it has LTE in it,
right.
And then together you get a solution, right? Or if you were decided to use a MediaTek chip or to use some other chip, you could pair the X50 with an X24 LTE modem and whatever chip of your choice that does the compute stuff,
right?
Etc. And then last week, they announced an X55, which combines the LTE and the 5G as a Gen 2 product, even smaller, more battery efficient. And today, they announced that, they didn't give it a name, but they said that they're going to sample by the end of year from manufacturers a third generation chip where the 5G and LTE are integrated in a Snapdragon processor chip and system on a chip. So now we're going to see a Snapdragon 8 something.
And you know how fast things are moving? A lot of smartphone brands now are setting up shop in San Diego. at Qualcomm headquarters. I know of a couple of them, Xiaomi included, who are, because innovation, I believe HMD as well, because innovation is so fast, they just want to be a next door neighbor so that they can be just part of this process that is happening. OnePlus is also working closely with them. So
and it's not just Qualcomm. I mean, there's
Huawei.
Huawei showed a new, like not a new, but a recently released 5G modem, which looks very competitive. And we know they're pretty dominant in 5G because they've been developing this in-house for years.
And they also have
do
the networks.
Right, exactly. So it's really interesting. But, the reason I brought up Xiaomi is because, I didn't expect, I was going to this press conference just kind of to do lip service to let's do a morning press conference to get my day started because it's going to be a crazy day. And I was like, Mi 9, we covered that. And then they show up with the Mi Mix 3 5G.
Yeah, and they have a price tag and a date for it.
Which is nice.
May 2019. For €599.
Which is insane. So this is telling you that 5G phones are not necessarily going to be much more pricey than their 4G counterparts. Because how much is a regular Mi Mix 3? Do we know? I can't remember.
I need to pull that data,
It's like maybe $100 less. It's, or close, $50 less. It's really a small difference.
Right.
And as far as I know, they're physically identical, externally. They might be a little bit thicker, but we're talking fractions of a millimeter here.
Right.
So wow.
So
then, we had more briefings on Saturday, but most of them are covered by the press conference that we had yesterday. So Xiaomi was the first press conference we went to.
And then Huawei.
Then was Huawei. And so Huawei wowed us with the way...
I see what you, I see what you did there.
Crazy, It's there's so many puns to be had with Huawei. But I mean,
good on Huawei for, they did tease us, so we knew that was coming.
Yeah.
But, the leaks were pretty much held towards the end, right?
I know. Let's talk about the stuff that's less exciting first. Because I haven't even given it love on my Instagram yet.
Okay.
I have a device to review, and I haven't even talked about it publicly yet. Yet it's been public for a day. And that's the brand new MateBook X Pro. They took the X Pro laptop, the 15-inch, beautiful, high-end, super thin MacBook Pro competitor that they made last year. And they said, hey, let's just make it better, in which we all wanted, and we kind of expected. But I really love that they didn't change the general design, that they kept this beautiful unibody, thin, light shape with a almost bezel-less display. And then they went with newest HN Intel.
For me, it's the discrete graphics card.
MX250.
250.
That's insane.
So, if you're a hardcore gamer or, video editor, maybe not. But if you're just editing like I do, basic cut to cut, it's a really powerful. It's good enough for a lot of the really hardcore stuff that people do.
I'm trying to think what else they did. They added NFC to some models, not all over.
So there's a sticker, NFC sticker, on right over here on the right hand side towards the touch bar. Which is used for, it's almost their version of Apple's being able...
It's just a sticker, so it's not actual hardware
It's not
inside.
A sticker. Apparently, I was told during my briefing that if you peel off the sticker, you lose the NFC. I don't know how that works particularly.
Wow.
I'm not techie enough, but it's an easy way to be able to send files. You basically tap your phone, Huawei phone, onto your
but you know
laptop,
what? I wouldn't
and
be
it transfers the
surprised
files.
Obviously that feature right now is only on Huawei devices, but they could technically...
It could be a protocol that they opened up.
It could be an APK that they put on their phones that anybody can download, and a Windows app you put on your laptop if it has NFC, and anybody can download. But
it's almost like AirDrop on a Mac.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. It's kind of an NFC-based implementation, AirDrop. I think Samsung has a similar thing already, but they don't really make a big fuss about it.
You know what Huawei did really well, though, is the animation. It's almost like when you touch it, you can really almost visually see it sucked out of your phone into the display. And that was done really well.
Didn't they update the Wi-Fi to a faster Wi-Fi or something?
Yes, faster Wi-Fi, faster Bluetooth.
So that's also why this thing works like it does, because they were able to transfer 4 or 5 photos virtually in the blink of an eye, which is because both the Mate 20 Pro and that new Huawei MateBook X Pro support the faster Wi-Fi, I think 1.3 megabits per second or whatever. 1.3
I have it in my notes somewhere. But
but it's the faster...
It is the faster
Wi-Fi. It's
either
1.3 or 1.6
They upgraded
Wi-Fi. It's
all
not Wi-Fi 6, though. I don't think it's AX. I'd have to check, but I'm pretty sure it's not Wi-Fi AX. They did announce a Wi-Fi AX router though, which was really
I wasn't really paying attention at that point. I was too excited about what was going to come next.
And if you have the specs here, that would be great. But anyway, the point is that it's a new laptop. It's going to be just as awesome last year. If I had one nitpick of anything that I would have done better on this last year's laptop that they've carried over to this year's, it's contentious because some people love it. It's the camera embedded in the function keys.
Agreed.
On one hand, I love the ability to the privacy. You can hide it and it cannot see anything. Yeah. But at the same time, it's it's that bottom view that if you're a little chubby like me, gives you a little bit like chubby neck.
Anybody from that angle.
And I like how the MateBook 13 is at the top, yet the bezel is still really thin. So what I'm wondering is there any way they could implement it so it's at the top, but have like a physical cover on it or something?
Which is really what you could do from a lot of the Lenovo laptops.
Right.
The shutter, privacy shutter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed. During my briefing, that was after reviewing the MateBook 13, I was like, yeah, this is... I mean, while last year you were like, ooh, look at that.
This is cool.
It wasn't really practical. Yeah. And so when I got the MateBook 13, I was like, oh, they learned their lesson. They've corrected it. And then when they did our briefing, I was like, oh...
But if you look, I mean, I haven't only looked at the demo devices we touched, but I know my MateBook X Pro from last year really well, and I think their chassis are 100% identical.
Yeah.
So, and I wouldn't be surprised.
I confirmed that.
If the displays are even identical at that point. Did they make a brighter display?
I'm not 100% sure.
So I'm pretty sure that you're just getting the faster, newer Intel chip, faster, newer NVIDIA chip, which is really great, and you're getting that NFC Huawei Share feature. But that's kind of my gut. About that laptop. And the pricing, did they announce any pricing?
I didn't see pricing, but if it's going to be like similar to last year, probably 1,400, 1,500 for the i7 model. I mean, this was when they announced last year, they kind of blew us out of, they blew us away because we're like, wow, Huawei can actually make a really good Windows laptop.
I mean, it was headed in that direction. The original MateBook X, right? And I was like, but now with last year, I was just saying, okay, you're done, you're good. Like this.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, it was like, well, this is one of the best Windows laptops you can buy today. And so for me, it was a solid update. I like the MateBook 13, the MateBook X Pro. The new MateBook X Pro. There's no new name for it.
We're going to do what we do with Macs and iPads. It's going to be the MateBook X Pro 2019.
Yes, that's what I did. In brackets, yes.
So the other thing they announced, it's not as important, I didn't spend as much time with it, is a MateBook 14, which is interesting because it's a hybrid between the 13 in terms of specs and the MateBook X Pro in terms of chassis size. It's a little thicker. It's going to be cheaper. But it has a pop-up camera.
It does. So it's funny, weird. And it has more ports.
A lot more ports. Surprisingly, they have a USB Type-C. That's not surprising. But they have still an HDMI port on it, like a full-size.
Oh, can I have one complaint about the MateBook X Pro? The positioning of while you do have an X amount of USB-C ports, only some ports have the charging. Only some ports have because it has full-speed Thunderbolt.
They've added
Thunderbolt.
Full speed because last year wasn't full speed.
Yeah, so but it's only limited to.
But it's interesting. The MateBook 14 has on one side, the left side has USB-C for charging, and it has a headphone jack, and it has
HDMI,
a full HDMI port. HDMI. And then on the other side, I think it has another USB-C.
I think two
USB-A. But one is 3 and one is 2, which is really weird.
Yeah.
And I mean, why 2 USB-As? Honestly, you only need one. If you're gonna like the MateBook X Pro has only got one, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But like honestly, at this point, if I'm gonna have a USB-A port on a laptop, I just want one, just for legacy. And I want everything else to be Thunderbolt and USB-C.
Agreed.
So that's obviously it's a different market.
I don't know how I feel about the 14 because I really love the 13.
Yes.
I really love the 13, and because they put them into the same category, just for everyone listening, for the benefit of everybody, Huawei kind of names their laptops based on the user that it's meant for. So there's I'm not really good with the names, but there's the X and the Pro are the high-end ones, right? So the X is kind of the middle of the road ones.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, not X, just the MateBook.
MateBook
is the middle of the road, which we saw on the MateBook 13 at CES.
Yeah.
The MateBook 14 is like a hybrid between the Pro and the 13, but it doesn't feel like it's in the same family.
No, it doesn't. It feels like a lower end product to me.
Yeah, so I'm kind of confused there. I really love the 13. I'm just saying.
My only gripe with the 13, and I already covered this on the show before, is that it's actually not unibody metal. It is a sandwich of unibody. Like the lid is unibody, the bottom lid is unibody, but the edge is plastic. And I'm like, oh no, what have you done?
So you, obviously, if you have felt both the Pro and the MateBook, they will definitely feel different, and you can really feel how premium the X Pro is.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you don't have much of a comparison,
but I'm
it's
surprised
right.
I haven't refreshed the MateBook X non-Pro, the smaller
I
one,
wonder
the
if-
super thin MacBook 12-inch.
I wonder
competitor.
even if that's going to stay around, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
I'm not really
either.
100% sure.
It's probably not a big cash cow for them.
Yeah.
So this is a much better, more...
Yes, because I don't want them to kind of like overwhelm their portfolio with too many SKUs. That's kind of always confusing.
And so now that we've done a segue into the land of laptops, and you did not expect that at MWC, I'm sure, we're not going to talk about phones again because Huawei did all this and we wanted to give them some love because we haven't really... They kind of like, honestly, nobody's talking about these laptops because it's a phone show and it's kind of weird that they launched them here. Anyway, but then I think it was a bit of a distraction on purpose to kind of get us like dulled out. And then we're like, yeah, whatever. You made some laptops. Get to the meat of it, Huawei. And then, boom! They dropped a boat anchor on all of us. It felt like an anvil in the cartoon because I believe I uttered the word wow out loud, which does not happen much. We're all super jaded and cranky journalists.
We are the most jaded.
We're the
most cranky
picky,
and the hardest to please.
I know, we're the picky little terrible people sometimes, and then like they blew us away. So the Mate X is the phone. It's folding phone with 5G. It's amazing. And it's amazing because it feels to me like a Gen 2 product when last week Samsung launched their Gen 1 product they've been working on for 7 years. And it's hard to explain unless you look at the pictures and videos we've both published. But you'll get it once you do. It's like maybe not Gen 2, but Gen 1.5 at least. It's so much sexier. I hate using that word because it's so cliche.
It is definitely sexier, sleeker, thinner. I got some extra time
Simpler.
today.
It's simpler. I
think
that.
it's very practical too. I mean, all those three, when it has three modes, basically, just think of it as a device with three displays. It's hard to kind of like...
Yeah, it's one display that can turn into three
displays.
Three modes.
They all are useful. And it's funny, I want to worth mentioning Samsung, because when I was in San Francisco for the S10 launch, and of course all of us were wondering, will we be able to see it? They started their presentation with it. There were demos, but after, at the Experience Zone, it was never to be seen again. I mean, it was not in a glass case. At least we thought that would have been the minimum, but it wasn't even shown off. It's finally here on the show floor.
Oh, it's here?
It's
behind glass?
Behind a really reflective glass case. It's I don't know if it's on. It doesn't look like it's on, and it's not in folded mode. So
you can't see.
So you definitely need to go and see it. I guess the reason why I'm saying this is because Huawei has been at least brave enough to show us their device up close. We're not allowed to touch it. Yeah. But there have been people holding it, showing it off today. So when we first got our briefing, we got really 2 minutes each to see it. Today I got a longer briefing. Oh. So I got to almost touch it, basically. We took selfies with it.
Oh, wow.
I was like, can it do this? It was almost like I had to voice control a robot to do the things I wanted to do. But I was like, can it do this? Can it do this? What about, can you do that? Can you fold this? Can you take a selfie? Can you try this? So we tried out a lot of things.
It wasn't just running some kind of
demo loop. It was really working. It wasn't a demo loop.
Wow.
Yeah. So, because I was asking them to do things on the fly.
And so we don't know anything about Samsung other than it's coming out for $19.80 or whatever dollars.
What scares me or gives me confidence at the same time is April. There is an April release date. And by
the way, I do want to note that I got it wrong last week on the show. I kept saying $1,890, but it's $1,980. But it's interesting because Huawei. Let's explain it for those people who are listening who don't know. So the Samsung Fold, such that the display is like a book. It's inside when folded, and then because of that, since you can't take calls that way or do whatever, they have another display on the outside, which is smaller and skinnier. It's a 4.6-inch display. And the problem is that it has so much bezel because, for whatever reason, I don't know, they couldn't afford or couldn't put a almost full screen display in the front like a normal Galaxy phone. That it looks like an iPhone from 2010. You almost expect a home button at the bottom because there's so much bezel. So I immediately felt that the Galaxy Fold felt frumpy in design from day one because of that screen in the front. And then because the screen unfolds like a book, you can't have cameras on the back if you want to take selfies with the screen unfolded. So you have that little notch in the top left corner, or right corner, with the cameras. And then you have cameras in the back so you can do back photography. And of course, if it's folded, you need a camera in the front. So it has all these cameras. So,
the components increase.
Right. So it seems complicated. There's notches on the displays. There is lots of extra cameras. And then here's the thing I didn't know when I made the show last week when we talked about the Galaxy S10 with Andy Boxall. I didn't realize that when it closes the Samsung Galaxy Fold, it actually does not fold flat. It's like the Royale a little bit, but less so. It kind of has to have a curve, so it can't have a fold.
That's what they were.
Because of that, it's a bit taco shaped, and it's gonna. I think it's something like 1.6 centimeters when closed on one end, and then thinner on the other end.
Right.
And that to me is kind of like, again, not the best design. So this is what our expectations were. And then Huawei comes along and goes, okay, Mate X, check it. And it's like, it folds outside like the Royale. So basically the screen, it's the other way. And because of that, they're able to make that curve of the part of the folding screen, on the outside, meaning that it folds flat, and it's only 10.1 millimeters thick when folded, 5 millimeters when unfolded. It's insane.
They were they really wanted to point that out, that they can kind of fold it close, fold it shut. And going back to TCL, which we started with, they also told us that the hinge technology is probably maybe even more important now in terms of an engineering than the display. And so the reps from Huawei told me the same thing. It's all about this hinge. They have a name for it. The Falcon Wing.
I know, it's like so copy of Elon and the Tesla Model X.
But it's cool. It's almost Apple-ish, that they have these fancy names. So their hinge seems to work really well.
And so the other thing that I think is interesting about the Huawei, so it opens like with the display on the outside, but it's not symmetric, right? The hinge. So you basically have it. The Samsung folds in two equal halves. The Huawei folds into one half. I guess it's not a half. It's like 60%, and the other one is 40%.
Right.
And what this allows is a thicker edge that houses all the electronics.
It's almost
and the
like
cameras.
a long tube of lipstick.
Correct.
But thinner. But that's where all the tech is.
And you can use that as a grip when the thing is unfolded.
You need it because it's super thin.
Exactly.
It's not like an iPad thin when the display is out. It's like this foldable wallpaper TV. That's really how thin the display is.
It's so clever of a design. Because of that, there's only 3 cameras on it, or maybe 4 with a time of flight.
3,
there's probably a time of flight that I didn't see, but you see 3 lenses.
Oh, and there's I asked, there was, I think, 3 cameras, the Leica logo, and there's this button. And I was like, what's that button?
Yeah, what is that?
So it's when you close it, it's like your release button.
Ah.
So when you fold it shut, it locks it in place, and then you press the button to unfold.
So because of that, because of the design, when it's open, you get 8 inches uninterrupted, almost bezel-less of display.
Right.
And then you can take photos with the back camera facing away from you because it's in that grip side thing on the right side. Or the left side, depending on how you hold it, because I'm sure it can be held anyway.
Yeah.
And then, if you fold it, you now get the front of it looks just like a Mate 20 Pro without a notch. It's like a notchless 6.6-inch display, so a little bigger than a Mate 20 Pro, but about the same size as, say, an iPhone, like chassis-wise, an iPhone
I asked him to...
10s Max?
He had his Mate 20 Pro in a case.
Yeah.
And I asked him to put them side by side in phone mode. And the Mate 24 even looked a little bit just slightly bigger.
So
with
there
the
you
case.
go.
So it's about the size
And
of
it's a little thicker because 1.1 centimeters. But here's the thing that blows my mind, is that it just looks like a phone. And then if you flip it over at that point in closed mode, you get that 40% of that display rolled around the back.
Right.
That's now touching that little edge with the cameras and all
Yes.
that. And that itself is a display, and you can use that for selfies.
That's your back display because there is no selfie camera.
yeah.
So you can compose your own selfies. But
And
yes,
you say it. 'cause
well, for
it's
me,
so cool.
for me, the biggest problem in the Instagram community is when you have the Instagram boyfriend or girlfriend, or when you just ask someone to take your photo.
Yeah.
You're really at the mercy of that person on the other end that who may or may not know how to take the photo or compose it well. So now you can see yourself.
Right.
You can kind of maybe adjust, or even just be at the right. I don't know if that was what you meant, but
Yeah, totally
you can
what I meant.
choose the right angle. You can pick your angles now.
Right.
Oh, if that doesn't look flattering,
So
I can
basically,
move over
you
here.
get two viewfinders. The front part of the screen becomes the main viewfinder for the person shooting,
Yes.
and then the back part where the cameras are is kind of your monitor.
monitor.
For like, let's make sure that my hair is right,
Yeah.
and like a mirror.
Oh, I
It's
find the
so
light
cool.
a little bit more. And I tried it today. I was like, can you please take a photo of me?
yeah.
And it was just, I mean, that's what I was most excited about. I mean, it's very practical for those who like to take photos. Even if you have a tourist on the street, I don't know if you want to let a tourist on the street hold your
with
phone,
that.
but you can at least, you can kind of like correct it before that image is taken.
For sure. No, it's clever. And I mean, I'm not a big selfie person, but I get the cleverness, and I think this is a very smart design, in my opinion. Now, there are a few issues, and I can think of with this system. I also want to point out the USB Type-C is on the edge of that lipstick part, as you called it. A very clever design again, so that you don't
The power button, the fingerprint, it does have a fingerprint sensor, but it's on the side of the device.
Yeah, so you can use it
so where the buttons are.
Correct.
And there is a hybrid micro SD plus nano SIM card slot as well. They're thrown
Their
into
new,
the mix.
whatever, NM nano memory card.
Yeah.
So the other thing so the things that make me scratch my head a bit, and I'm kind of like, okay, so maybe not quite as good as I thought, are the fact that, well, now that the display is exposed all the time because it's wraps around the back of basically the back of the phone when it's closed, you can scratch the back screen if you put it down on something, or the front screen if you put it down on something. Well, it's not the front; it's the same screen, but it's like the front part of it.
That's
the
the
rear
question that I think the fear of most people on the comments.
because it's not glass. Like, people have to understand, and I'm sure the listeners know because they're pretty savvy here, my listeners, but it's glass. It's not glass that somehow magically folds. This is plastic, and plastic is very scratch prone. And if all you have to look at, like the Moto Z series, they did that Z Force and Z2 Force that had a plastic display that was shatterproof. So great, shatterproof is those flexible OLED displays are going to be shatterproof, but they're going to scratch a lot. And so it's going to be interesting to see what kind of coatings they come up with to protect
They're
them.
aware of it. I mean, I asked that question as well, and they were like, we're Huawei. We're not going to put out a device that will embarrass us, so we're working on it. So I know that but that is a very, for me, in the comment section, that has been the biggest issue that most people have had.
And they have a case they showed.
They do.
And I didn't think I
the
saw it
case as much.
physically. I saw it in slides, so it's hard to judge.
Yeah.
I like that they thought about it, and they look like they designed a case that seems pretty smart.
Yeah.
But
They've done their homework.
Yeah.
And it looks, well, it's hard to judge, right? But at least from what we've seen from both companies, because regardless of whether you like it or not, people have automatically begun comparing the two unreleased products yet. Today, it's day one of MWC, based on what we've seen so far, it looks like the Huawei Mate X is further along, or more well thought out. But I could be wrong because I haven't seen or.
Well, I mean, the big thing is user experience and software, and we know that both Samsung and Huawei have issues around the software. I mean, Samsung's gotten way better, but so far what I've seen at the developer conferences and the videos I've seen of the folding experience haven't really left me too excited. But I feel like what I've seen from Huawei is also a little clunky. But again, these are early days. And I feel it's a little maybe more polished because I think you've seen it in action even more than me now. It does seem to work pretty well,
It does
right?
seem to work. I'm worried about how that plasticky display will look like.
After like a year or something?
To touch it.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it's exciting because I'm more excited now after this Huawei Mate X announcement about folding phones. Before that, I was just like, okay, I'm excited about Lenovo making a Razer that's using a folding display. That's cool. But the rest of it, whatever. Like Samsung, I was never excited about. But now Huawei showed me something that I'm like, okay, I could see myself using that. And that's really, really cool. Now, the other thing that, is a bit of not a letdown, but is going to, stop people in their tracks, other than the potential scratching of the display because it's on the outside, is the price.
Right.
Because Samsung's 1980, and this is
Huawei's is
2,600
something
US,
euro,
so
euro.
2290 euros, which is, and we know it's not going to translate directly to $2,600 because you don't do that. You don't conversion rate the prices. They are generally going to be very close. It's going to be like basically about $2,300, which is a lot. But then again, look, I don't feel that's a problem. Like, I think people are going to say that you're crazy. People are sick and tired already of the Galaxies and the iPhones costing $1,000 plus in certain
To be honest with
configs.
you, I think a higher price in this is actually better in terms of marketing.
Yes.
Because you're like,
It's
oh
a
my God,
device.
here's a phone that you cannot...
It's status.
It's status. And the reality is, this is not, I think what people need to... I know while the whole world... We live in a world where everybody knows that tech is accessible and they can buy any high-end tech. Yeah. And I understand if everybody's excited to get their hands on the device or go to a store and touch it. But the reality is, this is a first-gen device. Yeah. It has a long way to go. Yeah. But it does need to be sold. Yeah. Because we're not going to get to Gen 2, Gen 3, Gen 4 if Gen 1 doesn't go out with all its kinks and all its...
literally.
Right? Literally. So it has to happen. And people who... I asked myself that question today. And I said maybe I would have, because I did pay... I was a young, scrappy little boy when the first iPhone came out, and I still made sure I could get it. Yeah. And so I feel like hardcore tech geeks like us may actually plunk down the cash to own it. And there will be status chasers who will buy this device regardless of how the experience is.
And I think it's not, when you look at how much technology is in there, it has to start somewhere. And this is why TCL is working on making these things cheaper. Yep. So,
and you're owning a piece of history.
I'm not gonna knock them on price, but I know a lot of people are gonna be like, no way, right? And I get that. But let's move on and talk about Nokia, because I'm super excited about this. Well, I wouldn't say super excited because I really have to use it to become super excited. I'm super excited about the potential of what the Nokia PureView 9 PureView brings to the table, because I'm an imaging person. I love photography. I love mobile photography. And, Nokia has been, when they were still in part of Microsoft and independent,
or even before that,
did a lot of really cool
Nokia has always
stuff.
had a really, has had a long history of developments in mobile photography.
Strong imaging.
Way before the world, right now there's a 48 megapixel Sony sensor that any phone manufacturer can pop onto their phones. But back in the day, 5, 6, 7 years ago, they had the first 41 megapixel PureView 808.
The 808,
and so they've really been innovators in this space.
Exactly.
And then a lot happened, of course. Now they have this. What they're doing is different. It's a new way of doing things. Yeah. It kind of looks when I first saw it, I have to admit, I mean, the leaks, I was like, that's not right. That's a Photoshop. I know. Because it looks like a spider, looks like spider eyes. Yeah. On the back of your, of the new Nokia 9. But it's really interesting because 5 cameras, 3 monochrome sensors, 2 color.
They're all f1.8. They're all 12 megapixels.
Same specs.
They have large pixels. I can't remember
everything.
the specs. But
they take the photo all at the same time.
And so that's the thing that's interesting. This thing has a Snapdragon 845. It seems a little behind. But here's what you have to remember. This is not using Qualcomm's ISP for the imaging. They have their own custom chip in there that they worked on with Light, the company who made that 16 camera a while back. And it shoots the 5 cameras at the same time every time you take a photo. And it combines them for light and color.
So each of those, has a different focus point. Each of those has a different metering as well. Yeah. So you're getting so much data
Exactly.
on that raw
and they can
file.
adjust this data as well. So it's like they can change the metering on each of them to suit the conditions, and it's really clever, I think. And again, the proof is going to be in using it, right?
Right.
I mean, a lot of people are like, yeah, but what's the deal? Should I care? And I'm like, computational photography is a deal, and you should care. And this is an example of how to do it. Google's doing it a different way. Leica and Huawei are doing it a different way. So, other than that, the phone is, just a phone. 3,320 milliamp hours.
I think so.
6 gigs of RAM.
Some people might poop the fact that it's using last year's processor.
Yeah.
But during my briefing, there was a rep from Qualcomm there as well, and he was like, what you need to know is this is the first time that our ISP has been used to its full potential.
Oh, so it is Qualcomm's ISP.
Yes.
I thought Light was
ISP,
using their
yes.
own chip.
So I think it's Light technology. There's Light technology there because there was a rep from Light, but the ISP and DSP, he's like,
are on this
Qualcomm chip,
Oh,
and he was
wow.
like, this is the first time you've ever maximized it.
Maxed
You
it
know
out.
how like we've built the technology, take it and make it your own.
Yeah.
And people barely scratch the surface. And one good example is that he was like, is that the files, the depth information that you get from all the data when you take a photo is usually less than a megabyte.
Okay.
These ones are 9 to 12.
Holy
That's
crap.
how much data they're capturing. So so Qualcomm was, I guess, really excited. They don't need the 855 because they've been working on the 845 for a while now.
Yeah.
And they've really been able to maximize that. So they're really thrilled about this partnership. The Light partnership is a dedicated Light Lux capacitor for more inputs. So yeah.
Cool.
5 instead of 3, I think. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, so, I mean, look, the reality is they've been working on this for a long time, which is part of the reason this is a Mate 45, and it's, they needed to stay with that platform to optimize it for that platform.
I'm excited to shoot
I
photos.
want to get a review in it. I'm hearing that it's coming to the US, and probably not to a carrier, but possibly to B&H, which would make a lot of sense since they sell photo
It really
gear.
is geared. So I asked them because
It's limited edition, right?
Yes, they were very clear about it. It's limited edition, and in terms of in Nokia world, they have, I don't know if they have them all already. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Yeah.
But in terms of numbering, you think 9 being the highest number is the flagship, and they're clear to point out, to clarify, it is not the flagship.
Right.
You need to see this as a special
It's a
device.
special device.
And it's really meant for photographers because they have a partnership with Adobe Lightroom.
Lightroom, yeah.
And that app has been customized or tweaked to support the profiles.
Of the crazy raw files that come out of that
So
thing.
when you get those raw data, Lightroom knows exactly what to do with all that data.
Which is cool.
So yeah, I'm pretty excited to.
I can't wait. And it's not. What was the price point? It's not too expensive.
So the global average price point is €599.
Yeah, and I think they said $649 US or something.
So that's pretty good.
Yeah, don't quote me on that, but it's off the top of my head. But look, the reality is, you're getting Snapdragon 845, 6 gigs of RAM, 120 gigs of storage, no micro SD. You're getting
a
20
OLED 2K display.
Yeah, it's 6 inches, 599, 5.99. It is. Looks good. The display. It's 18.9. There's no notch or weirdness. It's small bezel, top and bottom. It looks a lot like the LG G6,
Yes,
right? Because
yes.
it's painted.
Yes.
It's
And
painted
then that
around.
circular, yeah.
I love that design.
Me
I
too.
want to see more phones with that. Like, I like white bezel phones. I
I
have a
don't-
white G6
and I don't
with the
mind the-
gold accents.
Nice.
It's so great.
I don't mind a little bit of forehead and chin.
No. I mean, it's tiny. And then it has, I said 3320 milliamp hour battery, USB-C, no headphone jack.
No headphone jack.
It
In-display
does,
fingerprint sensor.
Oh, it does.
Scanner.
I missed that. Yeah, I was wondering where it was because it's not in the back. So I missed that in my video, folks, which is on YouTube. You should watch it. And you should watch MJ's.
Oh yeah, my hands-on video.
Yeah, there's lots of hands-on video. We'll link to everything. And then in the show notes. And then the other thing I wanted to say about that phone is that it's pretty thin. It's like 6 millimeters or something. It's surprisingly thin when you consider how much stuff it packs.
Yeah.
And there's a
Yes.
20 megapixel front camera,
Yes,
which is
20.
a really weird number. But whatever. I'm sure it's not.
Spatial audio.
It's not. I'm sure the front camera is okay. It's not great. But
Yeah.
Whatever.
So it's great. I think the photos. Of course, the proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the photos.
Yeah. In this case, yes.
But I mean, also, I mean, I realize too, I know a lot of my friends who just like to take photos and spend hours and hours editing their photos. So this is for that kind of user.
Correct.
It's not for you who wants to immediately just post.
It's not for Pixel 3
out of
XL
camera
and iPhone users who just want instant gratification.
I will just do little minor edits on Instagram. Then maybe it's not for me. But if you really want to tweak and
if you shoot RAW or something,
But this might be the way forward. I mean, of course, I always am a believer that in 2019, it's all about a combination of really great hardware, innovative hardware, and computational photography. There is computational photography here as well.
Obviously,
right?
Interestingly, though, there is no OIS on any of the lenses because coordinating OIS on 5 lenses is a math problem of its own. And I get that. And if you look at what Huawei did with AI stabilization, I think you can get away with today, not having OIS if you know how to do it right computationally.
Right.
And so, they have so much data here to play with that I think it'll be okay. But again, we'll see. I'm looking forward to it. Briefly want to mention that there's a bunch of other Nokia phones that were launched. There's 3.2 or 4.2 or 1.
Yes.
A bunch of new ones.
There's a 210, that really small one. The
Nokia
210
is $35 US. It's a dumb phone, but it's amazing. It's the kind of
feature phone.
Yeah, it's the kind of phone you just want to put in glove box or something.
There's the Nokia 1 Plus, the Nokia 3.2.
That's it. And 4.2.
3.2 is 129 euros, and the 4.2 is 169.
So we're not going to go through specs because I want to talk about other stuff. But if you go online there, and GadgetMatch will have the specs. I'll link to that. Because you should check out that 3.2 and 4.2 because at those price points, 139 USD and 169 USD, I'm like, oh, Moto G7 competitor almost. The chip's not quite as fast, but if you look at the specs and the design chops on these, you're like, wow, we might have ourselves finally something that can give Moto a run for its money.
I think that is. Well, I know the importance of these price points in developing countries like in Southeast Asia and India, but even in the U.S., I realize, having seen both sides of the coin here, it is as price sensitive.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are very price sensitive. And when they ask for recommendations, the budget is always below what I normally can.
I know.
And so not that I dislike Motorola because I love what they're doing, but I love to see that competition in these lower price points. And I think that's exactly what they're trying to do in the US.
And this is very exciting.
Yeah.
So check it out. I want to move on to the next thing on my list, which was LG. Mm-hmm. There's also Microsoft and the HoloLens too, but I didn't go. I have actually purposely not read anything about it because I want to cover that on another show.
Okay.
Because it's a whole topic of its own.
I was overwhelmed yesterday. It was a lot, and maybe more technical than I'm ready for.
Well, I mean, it's still, still early days in wearable AR headsets like the HoloLens.
But you're right. I can really see the future coming.
Oh, it's
becoming clearer and clearer.
I know. So, LG launched, surprisingly, 2 phones. Mm-hmm. The G8 ThinQ, which we expected. But normally, the V series comes out in the fall, and they announced a V50, which is a 5G phone, of course. Mm-hmm. So we now have officially, I've counted.
How many?
Well, I don't know if I've counted them all, but in my count, I have Xiaomi with the Mi Mix 3 5G. I have Samsung with the Galaxy S10 5G, and I have LG with the V50 5G.
Right.
And I'm sure there will be more from Oppo and Vivo and others, and OnePlus obviously soon. But so far, officially at MWC,
officially 3,
those are the 3.
Me too, yeah.
And so that's exciting. So let's quickly tell you about them. So what I thought was, I want to be honest, these phones are very evolutionary. They don't feel very high-tech to me. And other than the 5G, obviously, which is pretty modern. But I just, LG has this problem where they're saying, well, our mobile unit is not doing so well. But I feel like they're not really trying. Like when you see what Xiaomi has to show, and Samsung has to show, and Huawei has to show, you're kind of like, where are you, LG? Like, are you even around? Like, are you caring? And here's my case for that argument. The G8 feels to me like a G7 where they just updated the Snapdragon to an 855, changed the really beautiful IPS LCD panel into a beautiful OLED panel.
Yes.
And then they added a time of flight, a very advanced, very modern, very new next gen, time of flight 3D sensor to the front camera system. Meaning you can now do essentially secure face unlock, which is what Face ID is on the iPhone, which is what Unlock is on the Mate 20 Pro, which
no longer is available on the Samsung had Iris for a while.
Yeah, exactly. And so what I'm talking about is it's great to have secure face unlock on your phone, and I'm glad Android is finally following suit after 2 years of Apple doing it.
Right.
But my point is that it doesn't seem enough, to have a phone that almost aesthetically is identical, has only 2 cameras in the back. Not counting Korea, which has a model. This is so confusing because the V50 has 3 cameras in the back.
Yes,
and then
the V40.
The V40 as well. But the G8 in Korea only has 3 cameras in the back. So the 2 cameras we get in Europe and in US, in Canada, and most of Asia is the usual wide angle regular, and then the tele is only for Korea, right? So, and thankfully they fixed some stuff. There's a bigger battery this year, 3,500 milliamp hour, which combined with the 855 should give it a really long battery life. They made little changes, like the display is a speaker alongside the normal speaker, so you now have kind of like the high end, like high frequencies on the glass and the low frequencies on the speaker. There's innovation there, but it's very iterative, and it feels to me like, especially cosmetically, they really even tried to.
Cosmetically, there weren't a lot of.
They're very
changes,
they just, Samsung has its own design language. Even Nokia has its own design language. Huawei has its own design. Where is LG's design language?
They settled on something for a while. I think when they got to I think it was a V30, where I kind of thought, oh, this feels like it is signature LG.
It's understated and it's well done. It's beautiful materials and build quality. There's no doubt. I don't want to knock them on that. I just feel like they need a personality to make it really stand out.
So they tried to do something this year with their magical gestures.
Oh yeah, but
it does. For me, it feels like a gimmick a bit.
It's totally a gimmick.
They instead of fingerprint they do have fingerprint recognition still.
They have
palm
They read
ID.
the veins. So this time of flight sensor that lets you do secure face unlock lets you do these gesture stuff and the vein palm.
So apparently
unlock.
hemoglobin is
absorbs or reflects.
Light.
I can't remember. I think
light.
it absorbs
infrared,
light.
Yes, infrared light. So that's how they kind of use it to
can
measure your unique. They say it's even safer than a fingerprint in terms of the
and
unique
it's interesting,
patterns on your hand.
but I don't see myself hovering my hand, and it's also slow. I've seen it.
Yeah.
The gestures are slow too, but look, the gestures. I actually found of a use case. I thought of a use case that works with gesture. People with disabilities. This is a big deal. I think very soon, all phones will have time of flight sensors front and back. And for people with disability, they'll be able to use gestures to control things.
Right.
Which, if you have problems with fine motor control, it's going to be a big deal.
I'm willing to give them a shot and not call the gestures a gimmick just yet. Maybe gestures are the future.
I just don't see myself ever using them. Like
your
phone is.
I feel like if I was maybe washing the dishes, which I do,
right in the kitchen,
and then you don't want, and your hands are dirty, and you kind of want to turn on the volume or something.
But this is something you want on a Google Home, not on your phone.
That's true.
Right? That's kind of how I see it.
That's true.
So again, looking at the V50, we're looking at basically a V40 repackaged with 5G. With a Snapdragon 855, the cameras in the back are identical. The cameras in the front are identical. The display, I think, is identical. I mean, it's probably slightly better because it's about the same size and it's OLED. Mm-hmm. But it's like, also, what's the differentiator between the G8 and the V50 other than 5G and the time of flight camera on the G8?
It now is almost like the Samsung release where there's the plus model and the baby model.
But then
that's
do that.
What you have, yeah.
Then do that. It just feels weird to me. But they also showed a case accessory for the V50
kind of interesting.
that is a second display.
I only saw pictures. I haven't seen the real deal.
So it was at the demo area. I didn't catch it. It was there briefly. I saw somebody getting a demo, ran there, and it was too late.
Okay.
I think they might have at their booth, and we can always see if Ken has something for us.
Yeah.
But I think that's that was kind of like the LG's cheap. I don't mean cheap in a pejorative way. I don't mean cheap in a dismissive way, but I mean cheap as in more affordable way of doing a folding phone in a way.
It's interesting because LG has really been. Sorry to end your thought. You're right.
It just felt to me like it's really like it's a beautiful, made by LG case for your V50 that adds a very thin second display over USB Type-C. It's very clever.
So I get what you're saying. And as much as brands think that we hate them, and not that LG does think that I hate them, but if brands think that I hate them because I'm being mean to them, I think most of us tech journalists are actually we cheer for everybody.
Yeah,
we want everybody to do well, even if we do end up sounding critical. I've been hoping and waiting to see LG to go back to the glory that it once had. I remember having my age, Samsung Galaxy S3, I think LG or I guess S4 and the G2. And I love the G2 more than I love the S4.
Yeah, it was amazing.
And so there was a time when they were neck and neck. The mods were an exciting experiment, even if they didn't do so well. So I wish they've fallen behind in the camera department. Samsung too might be just putting that out there.
With players like Huawei now.
And Nokia doing this.
And Google.
And the S9 camera isn't necessarily that much better. I'm worried about Samsung. But anyway, I feel like, but LG is known for its OLED panels, its flexible displays, its rollable things.
Yeah, right.
They have it in them to be able to wow us.
I know.
And do something that's uniquely, that they can be known for. Because I think to be successful in this fiercely competitive smartphone industry, you have to be really good at one thing at least to be that value proposition. And
for a while I was a huge fan of LG imaging and photography. Like even when the V40 was announced, first phone with 3 cameras, and I was like, yeah. And then I was like, oh, you didn't put OIS on telephoto or whatever. There was something I didn't like about it. Yeah. And then Huawei dropped the Mate 20 Pro, and it was like basically mic drop. It was like, you're done, because you can't even compare. Like, it's so much better.
Yeah, and it's harder because, so I'm like, or find a more competitive price point to compete in, because it's hard for me as a reviewer to see what's out there, and to when I approach my LG reviews, sometimes I'm stuck because I don't know what I can say that could make the video exciting.
Right. And that's the same here. It's like, I did my hands-on video, you'll see it, and I'm just like, just the G8, and I was just like, I want to love this phone, but give me some reasons.
Me too.
Right?
Yeah, that's how, yeah.
So there's one last thing, because we have to wrap up soon, is unfortunately we can't cover everything, but hopefully I'll have another show soon that will cover the rest. So, because there's going to be more announcements. Nubia is doing something tonight that I don't know about. But Sony this morning launched the Xperia 1 and the Xperia 10, and the Xperia 1 is their flagship. I did not make the press conference, it's too early, but I did read up on it a little bit. It turns out the Xperia 1 is a flagship phone, the Snapdragon 855. Does it have 5G?
I know.
Okay, and it has a crazy camera system, and on top of that, it has a 21:9 display that's 4K.
So if the
6.5 inch, right?
over the last 2 years or 1.5 years have become less wide, narrower, but taller.
I
but
love
this
that
one
aspect
is
ratio.
even taller.
I've been saying for a while in the podcast that somebody needs to do 21:9 on a normal chassis that we have today to make it narrower so it's easier for one-handed use. And I'm not sure they did that because I think it's 6.5 inch. It's a big phone.
So I didn't get a Sony brief.
Neither did I.
And so I'm like, I have other things to do, but yeah,
I'm
going to go and check it out tomorrow.
I'm going to go by what I heard. I'm going to check it out. But basically, they made a couple of main-range phones called the Xperia 10 and Xperia 10 Plus or something like that, a bigger one.
But the one is what excites me.
But the one is really what excites me, and the imaging system, it's got triple camera from what I understand.
So what excites me about the and I've said this over and over again, I love the history of the Sony Xperia. I was a fan of their boxy form factor.
Oh, I love their
and
boxy
Sony
form
makes most of their
factor.
money making imaging sensors for every other smartphone manufacturer, including the Nokia 9.
Witness the 48 megapixel sensor that
not Nokia 9,
using.
sorry. Yeah, but
it's great.
Every other amazing smartphone camera has a Sony sensor. Why can't you Why can't you be the leaders in the space? I am a fan, however, of Sony.
Because they make cameras.
I am a fan of the Sony Alpha cameras. I swear by them.
They are the best.
I highly recommend them. I hear that the Alpha team is the one that tuned these cameras.
Oh boy.
So if based on that description it all works out, then maybe, just maybe, because at the end of the day, while they do make great sensors, it's about how you
use them.
the
It's
software,
yeah.
behind it. So
and computational photography today.
So if maybe they will finally correct that issue.
I mean, I think it's worth mentioning because
Agreed.
even though, especially in the US, we don't think of Sony smartphones, they come out with a new phone at least every 6 months. They do some cool stuff.
They have great design.
They make great design. I love this 21:9 thing. A 4K display on a smartphone seems like overkill, but if you're into content consumption and creation, yeah, why not? And I think it's HDR10 compatible. It's insane. So this display is kind of the star of the show. It's not the first phone that Sony's done with
I would
4K.
love to review this phone because I want to know, is this form factor the way to go? Because I like people who offer me a new proposition.
Totally.
To change the way that I think.
Didn't they do like a really big 4K display phone a while back?
Oh, this is the first, by the way, what is it? The first 4K OLED.
It's a 4K OLED. Wow.
Yeah, it's a 4K OLED,
crazy.
I think, yes. Yeah.
Well, anyway, we'll let you know more.
They do 4K HDR. They're the only ones who do 4K HDR.
Yeah,
video recording and display.
Right. Yeah.
So,
I mean, stay tuned. Go to GadgetMatch to get the news part because we don't know our specs by heart because we haven't been briefed. But I just want to mention it because, that brings us to now, and we've already covered the Qualcomm announcement. So, we'll see how it goes. It's Monday afternoon. Stay tuned for more from MWC. But in the meantime, that's it for now. So do you want to tell everyone on the show where they can find you online, both GadgetMatch, but also
on YouTube
yourself?
I would love for you to head over to our YouTube channel. Well, there are a lot of videos there, youtube.com/GadgetMatch. Of course, GadgetMatch.com. I always say make it your daily habit. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at MichaelJosh.
There you go. And you know where to find me. I'm Tankgirl on Twitter and Instagram. That's TNKGRL, just like the comic book, but drop the vowels. And my YouTube channel is just my name. So if you can't remember how to spell my name, go to my Twitter and look at my name. And then do youtube.com/myname, which is Miriam Jouar, M-Y. And you can find some complimentary videos to this podcast, like hands-on, some reviews, lots of unboxings. I like unboxing things. I don't know why. And thankfully I get a lot of things to unbox, so it's good. And then, of course, I also want to thank our sponsor, Audible, audible.com. They're a pretty awesome platform for reading.
They are.
For books.
I use them.
Yeah, I use them too. And I think for a lot of us, we like to read, but we can't physically read books or even ebooks because we're traveling so much. So we need to be on planes, trains, taxis. And sometimes it's just like listening to a podcast. You can put your headphones on, noise canceling.
I'm listening to the new book by Marie Kondo. Spark Joy. Well, she's a big hit now. I listened to her first book, The Art of Tidying Up, on Audible many years ago.
Does she read them, or is somebody else reading them?
No, she doesn't read them, unfortunately.
But that's the thing. They always pick really good narrators and readers.
It almost feels like her. I really do love, though, what I love about Audible is when they get the author to read it. And
correct.
Especially
and
if it's like when Ellen reads her books. Michelle Obama read her book. So that's actually like an additional thing that you don't get when you're reading.
Totally.
Yeah. When
check out audible.com, specifically if you are in a situation like you're driving all day, if you want to read books but you can't read them and you want to listen to them, they're the absolute must-have platform. And I want to encourage you to go in the show notes and check out the deal we have. We get 30-day free trial for members of the podcast, and if you actually click on the link there, you'll help us out. Yeah, so do that. It's audibletrial.com/mobiletech. Audibletrial.com/mobiletech is how you're gonna support the podcast and get a deal at audible.com. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks for having me. I always enjoy talking with you.
Yeah, it was a good time. We'll have more from the show, as I previously mentioned, hopefully soon. But I'll definitely have a show next week to recap, so stay tuned for that. Cheers, everybody.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with ThinQ, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.